All right. Okay. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to Overdose and Chill Live. We're going out live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I'm really excited about today's guest, David from RJ Living. He's the founder of the business there. We have been working together for just over a year, is it, Dave, or getting close to?
Getting close to, yep.
Yeah, getting close to, which makes it all the more scary because it just seems like yesterday. Dave, welcome, firstly, and please introduce yourself. Tell me about you and your story and journey of founding RJ Living.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, happy Friday, everyone. The Overdose Chill's been popping up on my LinkedIn feed for the last sort of couple of months, and I've occasionally clicked on. So really excited to be part of it today. Yeah, look, my background is actually started off a bit more corporate than where it's ended up today. So I actually started off studying commerce and law at Monash University. And back then I had a corporate path in mind. But I'd always loved being involved in business and had a few sort of fun ventures through my teens and through uni. So when I was a teenager, we had a car wash business, basically washing cars in the street. And the highlight of that business was actually when one of our customers gave us the keys to his Porsche. We were 14 years old at the time, and he said, just drive it out of the driveway, guys, take it for a spin and let me know when it's done. So that was a lot of fun.
You didn't crash it or scratch it?
Didn't crash it or scratch it, made it back in one piece, which was good. And we also had an eBay business through university with a few friends, basically just selling Christmas decorations.
Wow.
So for those of you who are based in Melbourne, if you think Kew Boulevard just before Christmas, we were basically selling all those decorations and lights that you'd see on display there. And that was lots of fun.
That for? Right through uni or?
Right through uni, yeah. So sort of about 2 years maybe.
Yeah.
And we used to sit
eBay years too.
Correct.
Yeah.
It was lots of fun because I was doing it with mates, and we used to literally sit there every night just watching the auctions end.
Yep.
And every time an auction ended, it was like winning Tats Lotto. There was such excitement. So there was always sort of an entrepreneurial flame that was kind of burning. But I decided, despite all that, to follow a safer path initially, and I landed a graduate job working with Goldman Sachs in the markets area. And that was actually a great start to my career. It was an opportunity to sort of learn from some really smart people. Goldman's was obviously known for attracting some of the best talent.
Preeminent, right? Like globally,
correct.
Grads want to end up and have their first stint out of uni.
Correct. I'm not sure how I slipped through the cracks, but it was great because I surrounded myself with some really clever, ambitious and driven people. And I still catch up with a lot of them today, but I think it really got me going and made me realize that there were some pretty talented people out there who were willing to push themselves pretty hard. And I think it helped unearth perhaps a bit more ambition and motivation in myself.
Yep.
And so after, spent 2 years at Goldman's, and after 2 years doing that, I decided to revisit that entrepreneurial sort of desire that I had. And I actually ended up at a trade show over in China, the Canton Fair in Guangzhou, which is basically the mecca of product. Picture 5 MCGs worth of every supplier from China displaying any product you can imagine.
Yeah, it went to like a baby sister version of one in Hong Kong about 10 years ago, and it's mind-blowing. You know, those trade fairs, they're crazy.
Correct. So yeah, we arrived and we just started looking at products and sort of trying to understand what opportunities there might be out there, particularly for selling products online. And back then, there was a bit of a movement starting towards furniture online. So I had in the back of my mind that category could be interesting. And I knew that it was very
what year was that where that A, you went to the fair, and B, the interest for online furniture had started? Because it has been one of the verticals that's more of a late bloomer, right?
Definitely, yeah. And there's still a lot of runway there, but we can touch on that later. This was back in about 2011. So there wasn't much happening online for furniture. And what was actually happening was more the replica style furniture. So all the knockoffs, picture the Eames chairs. There was a huge demand for that, but I knew in the back of my mind it was a very commoditized product. Everyone was selling the same sort of thing. So we sort of started talking to a few factories over there who were actually doing sort of different designs, so differentiated products. And I thought, that could be interesting, because everyone's rushing for the replica stands, but no one's talking to these other factories who've managed to create something a bit different.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time speaking to my wife and sort of saying to her, you know what, maybe I'll give this a go, and start bringing in some containers and just see how we go on eBay. And she's got a much lower appetite for risk than what I have.
I was going to say, because I think when you leave, I've been in a similar position, and it was around the same year, where you leave a stable salary earning, car, low risk job, particularly when you're married or you've got a young family. To go out on your own is often pretty hard to convince those around you to take that risk, because I was there at one point myself.
It was a really interesting conversation, sort of talking to my family and friends about quitting Goldman Sachs to sell furniture online. People thought I was crazy, but they did actually encourage it. Certainly my wife did, and the family around me could see that I wanted to give something a go. So we started basically just bringing containers and selling them on eBay. Back then, eBay was a big thing, and it still is.
Yeah,
but yeah, back in 2012, the e-commerce space was really just starting. And so I took my wife over for our honeymoon to Guangzhou. That's where we spent our honeymoon walking up and down aisles at another trade fair. And one thing really just led to another. Started with that eBay store, eventually graduated to obviously build an online store.
Yeah. Built
a community and traffic around the brand, and the business has grown considerably since then. We've now got sort of 26 people. We're at about 4,000 SKUs, nearing 10,000 daily visits to the website, and that's growing every month. So really enjoy what I do, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool. And so we were having a bit of a chat earlier this week. You founded the business all completely bootstrapped. So at that stage, you're starting to go to the trade fairs. Your wife's coming along for the journey. Were you still on your own at that point? And then as the years went on and you started the platform, talk me through your journey of how you built out your team and started to scale the business as the years went by. Because I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, and when you first start out, that first hurdle is not ever the drive. It's not ever the passion. Yeah, you've convinced loved ones to give it a red hot crack. It's getting over that. How do I go beyond me and my passion and drive, and how do I fund getting the right people into the business and growing to make it viable, profitable, and getting to that level where you're like, sky's the limit here. So talk me through how you approach that, and maybe even the wins and losses around that with people. I'm always really intrigued by how people select staff, particularly when you're on your own and it's yours. I think it can be one of the hardest things we have to do as entrepreneurs is A, let go a little bit, and B, find like-minded people, but people that are better in certain areas to add to the success of what you're trying to build.
For sure, yeah. So the people side is honestly what I enjoy most about what I do. And it's a very tight-knit team that we have. So most of us at RJ have been working together for quite an extended period of time. I have 2 people in the business who have been with me for more than 6 years.
Yeah.
And so I think getting those first few hires right is just so important. And my approach early on was to hire all-rounders. And when I reflect on that decision, it was so important because we all had to be prepared to wear many, many different hats and perform many different functions in the business, even if we had absolutely no idea how to perform them. So I was lucky that I found sort of 2 or 3 people that were really talented in some areas, but if they didn't know anything about something else, they were happy to go and learn it. So those first few hires, I can't understate the importance of getting them right. And the staff turnover has been sort of very low, and I think it's because we've got quite a unique culture at RJ. It's a family type culture. We really look out for each other. We care about each other, and over time, as management, we've really tried to share the value that the business creates. So when times are good, we try to reward the team as best as we can. And likewise, when times are bad, we go back to the team and we say, hey, we can't do some of these things, and this is the reason why. It's like a household budget. We're very transparent right along. So it's always been sort of a very open and honest conversation. And I think people appreciate that.
I think what a lot of businesses, small or large, and I had this realization last year because I got to do some mentorship through the Google Academy program. And one of the biggest things was around transparency on A, what your goals are as a business, but B, how you're tracking against those goals and helping your team understand the highs and lows of what that is, because people want to know that more than you think. And, we try and do that. We now, outline to our team what we're trying to achieve each month, how we track the month before. And it's been game changing because people buy into it, because as your team grows bigger and you move away from just having those all-rounders that are really bought in naturally, you go into that area of getting some more specialists, and they can be quite narrow in focusing on their individual goals, which might be flourishing and they're brilliant at their job, but is it having that reverberating success impact on the rest of the business? So I think that's a really great point to make around transparency and sharing where you go. And I love what you said about sharing in the good times. I think that's how you actually retain staff, because there's such a transient community in digital, as I'm sure you sort of know, and I mean, probably more in agency land, but I think, trying to keep teams consistent and keep teams together helps companies flourish. And I think in the long term, sometimes helps people's careers. Definitely.
And Laura, I'm sure you've found the same thing as well over at Overdose. And I can see just how important the culture is with Overdose, but we really also try to hire the cultural fit over capability or talent. I think that's a big thing in terms of the RJ journey. We know that if the cultural fit is not right, no matter how smart the person is, it won't work.
I agree.
Yeah. And we've had, like you, I'm sure, have, a few disasters along the way. But we've now actually got to a point as a business where we've really clearly defined what the RJ culture is. So we've got a course.
How do you do that? And how do you say in the interviewing or qualification process, how do you qualify that in an individual and communicate that? I'd be really interested to know, because I think that's one of the hardest things to do in recruitment is, impart what the culture is, because until you're in one, it's hard to get it through to people.
Definitely. I think for us, a big part of it was actually just being able to define what the RJ culture is. And we did that about 6 to 12 months ago. We created a set of core values that we basically live by every day. So some examples of those values would be acting with respect, humility, and trust. So we try to make sure that every communication we have, internal or external, it has to be, with candor, honesty, and dignity at all times. We also have a pillar around satisfying and delighting customers, remembering that our customers are more important than any of us.
Yep.
The customers are the lifeblood of the business. We need to make sure we're exceeding their expectations on every single shopping experience that they have. Yep. As we went through this process of documenting it, it became much clearer in our minds who we are and what we stand for. And we've now took it as far as going through these core values in an interview.
Yep.
And actually just putting them on the table and seeing what sort of reaction we get from a candidate. Yep. And I think we're getting better at telling pretty quickly now who's going to be able to live by these values and who's not going to be able to.
Yeah, that's a great way. I mean, it's the easiest way to do it is tell them what they are and gauge a reaction. I can attest to the way, your communication and the respect and dignity that's shown, like even along our journey, not every day is a record-breaking day, right? But the way your team broached those challenges with our team, it's always in a collaborative, respectful manner. And that's not always the case in our industry because it's commerce and, you live and die by the numbers, that it can be hard and people are under varying levels of pressure. But I think the way those challenges have always been brought together as a group has been really positive. I wanted to also ask you about your customers and talk to me about, obviously they are the lifeblood and they're the lifeblood of any organisation, or they should be. What's your strategies around retention in furniture for those that have not sort of worked in that space in online furniture sales? What's it like? Is our retention levels higher? How do you bring people back in, given sometimes the purchases, I could imagine, are much longer term investment pieces? What's the strategies, or what are some of the things, without giving away the secret sauce, but what are some of the things that you've done as a business to shore that up in your customer strategy?
Yeah. Look, to start off with, the best retention strategy is making sure the customer experience in the first place is the strongest it can possibly be. So we're sort of still trying to master certain aspects of that initial customer experience. And e-commerce, I mean, people think it's easy, but there has to be mastery around so many skill sets. You need to be good at tech. You need to be good at, in our case, design, supply chain, logistics, customer service, marketing. There's a lot to get your head around. So we're trying to make sure that, firstly, that initial experience meets a minimum level in all those areas. And there's some areas where we're much stronger in, and there's some areas we're much weaker in, but we need to be at a minimum standard across all those areas. So that's the first piece, is making sure the first touch point is the most positive it can be. In terms of retention, furniture does not have a high repeat purchase rate, so it is a challenge. What we've really found is, firstly, looking at the initial purchase and what the customer has bought can often be a great insight into what they're going to buy next. So, if someone's in a dining room shopping experience, chances are, if they've bought the table, they're going to look at chairs next. So we really try to think about the room and how the customer is working through the room, and ensuring that our subsequent offerings are tailored towards what that initial purchase was.
Yeah. Cool. And has email marketing, like in the way you're capturing that, have you started to concentrate or break down how you're tackling your email strategy to fit with that upsell, cross-sell, retention or repeat purchase?
Yeah, definitely. So our email program is very based around now what the customer has purchased. And it's differentiated in the sense that sometimes we're trying to sell within the room, but sometimes we might be able to pick up through our data that room is done, and they're now ready to move on to the next room, and our offers need to be tailored towards that. So email's been an incredibly important channel in keeping the retention the highest it can be. And we've invested quite heavily in that, as you know, Laura.
Yeah.
And it's working very well for us.
Yeah, it's been exciting to see some of the stuff that's come out. I mean, it's still early days, and I think that's the beauty of email and what you've chosen to do with your strategy is it builds and you lay the first block and then the second block. And I think that's probably what's most exciting is for you guys as a channel where you can take that. You touched on this before about all the different facets, particularly when selling online furniture, is you can't just get one or two things really right. You have to have that minimum level of achievement in all the core factors of e-commerce that's quite different to if you're selling smaller products, whether it's wellness products or fashion. I see the challenges in selling online furniture and I'm still learning about them. But what would you say is the single biggest challenge of selling furniture online that you continue to be faced with, or it's one that you never take your eye off the ball in continuing to try and improve in?
Yeah, so hard to round down one single challenge, but I think there are many challenges. We're dealing with, particularly our business, we're middle market. So we're not that low end volume kind of commoditized product. It's middle market and middle quality, the offering. So the price point reflects that. And our average order values are actually quite high compared to a lot of other e-commerce businesses that you deal with. So the first point that we really focus on is imagery. So we have invested very, very heavily to ensure that we have market-leading styled imagery. We want to give people basically inspiration and show them exactly how a product can look in their space. And we've found that can give them the confidence to say, hey, I love that look and I want it in my home.
Yeah.
And we often find that if we represent a look, customers will buy the dining table, and they'll buy the chairs, they'll buy the vase, they'll buy the mirror that's behind it. So because our stylists often have done that work or the interior design for them, the purchase becomes much more easier because a lot of people can't actually picture what something's going to look like in a real space. So really proud of our imagery and what we've brought to market there. But it's also about just doing the basics really well when you're dealing with higher ticket items. So very accurate product descriptions, measurements, specifications. A big thing for us has been offering a really clear, no questions asked, money back guarantee, because online can be tricky, hey? And sometimes a product may not actually fit the space that it was intended for. So we're really happy to facilitate returns. No mess, no fuss, no drama. It just comes straight back to us. And that's a big thing in furniture.
Yeah, I can imagine that'd be massive. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there like me that can't measure and it's terrible with numbers, and I've had it happen to myself. So I think that comfort. I mean, a furniture purchase online is, I think the attitude towards it is really changing. And I think maybe not to bring up the COVID word because I've tried to do all my OD and chills without talking about it. But I think the change in people spending more time in their homes and not being able to go out and browse and peruse when you're in and out of lockdowns has been game changing. Have you seen it? And I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, and it is stating the obvious a bit, but how has that transformed your business over the last 18 months?
Yeah, so the transformation has been huge, and we're very lucky to be in one of the categories that's been the most positively affected by the pandemic. So it's well documented that everyone's been cocooning at home, and the home has become a real sanctuary. So people have taken the opportunity to invest in their homes, especially in the absence of being able to go on a holiday. I think a lot of that travel-related spend has been directed to the home. So we've seen insatiable demand for home products, and people I speak to across the industry say it's not just furniture, it's really anything related to the home has become a massive focus in consumer spending. So yeah, for us, it really caught us by storm. I mean, when the pandemic was first hitting, we were planning all sorts of doom and gloom scenarios, but it's actually gone the other way. The industry's really grown massively over the last 12 months, and I think we've got this new cohort of COVID customers, obviously not all infected, I hope, but we've had this massive influx of new customers. So it's now about, as we touched on earlier, how do we retain them, and how do we drive repeat purchase, because it's been a huge period of new customer acquisition for everyone across the furniture space.
Yeah, and I see that in a few verticals with our client base, and just looking at, we had this big boom period. It's still going. I think it has started to taper off somewhat, but how do we keep that huge net new acquisition of customers engaged, partially loyal to the brand? I'm a big believer that complete brand loyalty in an online environment is utopian. But, how do we keep people engaged to then continue a sustainable growth trajectory for any kind of business? And I would imagine that absorbs a lot of your thought process for the future, as hopefully one day we start to come out of this pandemic, the impacts that will have on the way people live and the changes as we slowly come out on the business, and keeping that home is your sanctuary ethos and getting people to continue to come back when they need the next piece. But if they can go on a holiday, how do you still get some of that discretionary spend? And I think that's something that not just furniture businesses are facing, but a lot of other areas as well, that, the change in consumer behaviour online has been seismic. So it's one of the big challenges I think a lot of businesses will face in the coming sort of 18 to 24 months.
Definitely. Yeah. I think forecasting has never been more difficult. No. It's really hard to know what the next 12 to 24 months are going to look like. And I think it's important for businesses out there not to get too carried away, because the growth has been very strong, but we don't know what the next 12 to 24 months is going to look like. So we're certainly trying to take a conservative view, make sure we seize the moment. There's definitely a moment happening, because let's not forget that, Australian furniture and homewares penetration is still at about that 9 to 10% mark. And if you look overseas, in the UK and the US, they're up at about 20. So there's still a lot of runway to go here in our space. So it's certainly an exciting time, but we do need to temper that, because we don't know what consumer spending is going to look like when the borders open up. And that'll be an interesting wait and see. Yeah, no,
I genuinely agree with that. I want to finish on something, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, about how you've bootstrapped and you've started this from scratch, and you've been sustainable from day one. What do you think was the one or two key things that you did or approaches that you took that allowed you to continue in the bootstrap journey all these years later through, I'm sure, some dips, but also pretty significant growth and demand, and also be sustainable from that day one? Because I know that that's a lot of entrepreneurs or people considering starting a business, that is the biggest fear, is how do you create something that you can live off and be sustainable, but also grow? So what would you, if you were to, interview yourself 10, 15 years ago, what would be the two takeaways that allowed you to do what you've done?
Yes, I'm a huge believer in bootstrapping, at least for the first few years. And RJ Living is actually testament to long-term bootstrapping and the fact that you can build a very sustainable business by bootstrapping. So we started the business basically with $10,000 to $15,000 of personal savings, never taken a dollar of external funding. And what I like about bootstrapping is that the very existence of the company is actually challenged very regularly. And that's it's because you may have to make sure that every single dollar is counting, and every decision is going to bring value and ROI. So I've learned to scale very mindfully and ensure that we invest very selectively and carefully along the journey. And my biggest takeout from the last 5 to 6 years has been that bootstrapping really makes you emphasize how to make money rather than spend it. So yeah, we needed to produce cash from pretty much day one. And you learn to be street smart and have a mindset that will prevent you from becoming reckless. So I'm very focused on how to make money rather than how to spend it. And I think that VC kind of model can lead you down a path of just being more focused on what are you going to do with these funds, how are you going to spend them. Whereas my every waking hour is spent on, how can we bring more revenue? How can we sell more? So I've been a huge fan of that business model.
Yeah, I think that's a great points to finish on, because we're, Overdose is really, really similar. We're bootstrapped, and I think those big investment occurrences, and you see it happen, I think it makes you as a founder or as a shareholder or as a business owner somewhat lazy, and it removes the hunger and the almost primal requirement to survive and focus on that revenue generation and money making, rather than what are you going to spend something on to try and get that next level of growth. So I think it does disjoint it, and I really agree with that. And it's been an absolute privilege to speak to you today. I know you're very respected in the industry. You made the top 50. Was it this year or last year?
It was this year, Laura. Yeah,
it was this year. I judged it 2 years ago, and it's a very, very intense process judging. So anyone that thinks it's not done on merit is gravely mistaken, because it's a pretty intense process to make it on that list, and I think very well deserved. We're thrilled to have you as one of our clients and wish you all the very best, and appreciate your time sharing everything that you did today, Dave.
Thanks, Laura. It's been lots of fun, and likewise, we've really valued the partnership that we've built with Overdose, and hope it continues to grow.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, Dave.
You too. Cheers. Thanks.